This just changed everything. You need to see this. Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal criminal defense lawyer, the man who has been running the Justice Department as acting attorney general, the official who oversaw the chaotic release of millions of Epstein files, is now in open political freefall. His confirmation to become permanent attorney general is collapsing under the weight of those same files. Epstein survivors are calling him out by name. Republican senators who were supposed to be locks are suddenly holding the line. And the White House is scrambling to save a nomination that was supposed to be routine. This is not normal. Read that again. The man Trump picked to lead the entire federal justice system is being publicly accused by the very people the system was supposed to protect of treating their trauma as a political problem to manage instead of a crime to investigate. The Epstein files did not just explode. They detonated inside the Trump administration, and Blanche is standing at ground zero. Something big just shifted. And if you care about whether the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country answers to survivors or to one man's political survival, you need to understand exactly what happened. Here's how fast this moved. Watch the timeline carefully. In November 2025, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Trump signed it. The law required the Justice Department to release the vast majority of its Epstein-related records with limited redactions to protect victims. From December 2025 into January 2026, the DOJ, with Blanche deeply involved as Deputy Attorney General and later acting AG, began dumping documents in tranches. Roughly 3.5 million pages eventually hit the public database. Almost immediately, the problem started. Victims' names, phone numbers, home addresses, email addresses, and even nude photographs with faces visible appeared in the releases. At the same time, names of powerful men connected to Epstein stayed blacked out in places. In the summer of 2025, before the full public release wave, senior Trump officials, including Blanche, gathered in the White House Situation Room. Not for a terrorist attack, not for a war, for the Epstein files. Vice President J.D. Vance reportedly called the fallout a huge problem. The discussion was about containing the political damage to Trump and the Republican Party. In April 2026, Pam Bondi was fired. Blanche became acting attorney general. He immediately started signaling that the Epstein matter should be in the rearview mirror. In June 2026, Trump nominated Blanche for permanent AG. Epstein survivors, citing the Situation Room meetings and the botched releases, came out hard against him. On July 15th and 16th, confirmation hearings took place. Senators pressed Blanche on redaction failures, on whether the review was designed to protect Trump, on his dual role as former personal lawyer and now top law enforcement officer. On July 16th and 17th, under pressure from Republican Senator Thom Tillis, who said he would not vote the nomination out of committee until it happened, Blanche finally sat down with a group of Epstein survivors for roughly 90 minutes. The survivors left furious. They called the meeting performative, abrasive, condescending, full of interruption and gaslighting. Within days, they wrote open letters to the holdout Republican senators, urging them to vote no. This part matters. The nomination that was supposed to sail is now in serious trouble. The White House is actively lobbying Tillis and John Cornyn. The story is still moving. This is the part most people miss. Todd Blanche is not some random DOJ careerist. He was Trump's personal criminal defense attorney. He sat at the counsel table during the New York hush money trial and other cases. When Trump won in 2024 and started staffing the second administration, Blanche moved into the Justice Department as Deputy AG. When Bondi was removed, he stepped up. The Epstein files are not abstract. They involve decades of alleged sex trafficking of minors, a network of powerful men, and a mountain of government records that Congress finally forced into the open. Trump has always maintained he cut ties with Epstein years before the worst crimes and has never been accused of criminal conduct in the files that have been released. But the documents contain thousands of mentions of him. flight records, and unverified allegations that the administration has spent enormous energy managing. Context matters here. Blanche was in the room when the political strategy was discussed. He oversaw the document review. He is now the nominee for the job that decides whether any further investigative leads in those files get pursued. Survivors say that combination is disqualifying. The White House says he has been more transparent than any previous administration. The fight is no longer theoretical. It is personal, institutional, and happening in real time. Here's what got me. The survivors' own words after the July meeting are blunt. Jess Michaels described it as patronizing. She said Blanche would dispute everything she raised that's not true, or I never said that. Danny Bensky called it an hour of deflection, interruption, and gaslighting, and said it felt like a check-the-box exercise so Blanche could claim he met with survivors before his confirmation vote. Annie Farmer, whose sister reported Epstein to the FBI in 1996, said he was abrasive, condescending, and intentionally non-committal. Liz Stein told PBS the meeting was performative, so he could check a box for his promotion. Read that again. These are not random internet commenters. These are women who lived through the abuse, whose personal information was exposed in the document dumps, and who finally got FaceTime with the man running the Justice Department. The redaction failures are documented. Multiple outlets reported that victims' identifying information, names, dates of birth, bank details, driver's licenses, addresses, and nude images appeared in the public releases. Blanche has acknowledged mistakes. In his confirmation hearing, he said roughly 1% of the redactions had to be fixed, that lawyers were on call 24/7, and that he takes responsibility. He also insisted the department went to extraordinary lengths to protect victims and that unredacted versions were made available to members of Congress. Here's what they didn't emphasize in a lot of the coverage. The same review process that left victim data exposed kept certain powerful names behind black bars. House Democrats on Oversight released a letter claiming the process appeared designed to identify and shield Trump, including training materials instructing reviewers to log and redact the president's name. Blanche has repeatedly denied any preferential treatment. In December 2025, he told NBC's Meet the Press the department was not redacting information around President Trump. Pay attention to this part. A federal judge, Emmett Sullivan, ruled in June 2026 that Blanche had effectively conceded the DOJ was in violation of the Transparency Act by not responding substantively to demands for additional records. The court set deadlines. The DOJ pushed back, citing victim privacy and asking for stays. That fight is still live. The Situation Room meetings are the detail that stands out most. According to the New York Times reporting that sparked the survivors' June statement, senior officials, including Blanche, treated the files as a reputational crisis for the president and the party, rather than an investigative opportunity. Ideas floated included having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell. Blanche later did interview Maxwell over 2 days. She was then moved to a minimum security facility. Blanche said the transfer was for her safety. This changes the picture. The survivors' joint statement after the Times reporting was clear. They were deeply disturbed that the release was framed as a PR problem instead of a chance to pursue leads. They single Blanche out because he was at the table and is now nominated for the top job. This is failing upward, plain and simple. Let that sink in. The numbers are staggering. The DOJ reviewed millions of pages, thousands of videos, tens of thousands of images. Blanche has said the case is closed in the sense that no further prosecutions are currently planned beyond what has already happened. Survivors keep pointing to investigative leads they say are still sitting in the files. Blanche's position is that the department has complied with the law, fixed errors, and been more transparent than the prior administration ever was. Almost nobody is talking about this part with enough urgency. The real fracture is not just survivors versus Blanche. It is the collision between two competing definitions of justice. One side sees the files as a political liability that must be managed so the administration can move on. The other side sees them as unfinished business involving child sex trafficking and powerful people who may still be protected. This is the piece that changes how you see it. When the White House is lobbying Republican senators to save the nomination of the man who oversaw the release, while the same man is in court resisting further disclosures ordered by a federal judge, the institutional conflict is structural. Blanche's dual identity, Trump's former personal lawyer and the nation's top law enforcement officer, is not a side issue. It is the issue. The coverage often treats the redaction errors as bureaucratic clumsiness. Survivors treat them as evidence of priorities. Their safety was secondary. The political temperature of the documents was primary. That gap is what is driving the open rupture. To be fair, the other side has a point. Blanche and the administration argue they inherited a mess. The Biden administration released almost nothing for years. Congress forced a massive, accelerated review of millions of documents under a tight statutory deadline. Mistakes in a project of that scale were inevitable. Blanche has said the reviewers were experienced attorneys who took pains to protect victims, that errors were fixed quickly when found, and that members of Congress had access to unredacted material if they wanted to challenge any specific redaction. Here's their strongest argument. Trump signed the Transparency Act. The DOJ released millions of pages. No previous administration did anything close to that. Blanche has publicly stated the department is not protecting Trump and is not redacting information about him. He has taken personal responsibility for the redaction failures in open hearings. He has said any new material that surfaces will be reviewed. And he has pointed out that many of the most explosive claims circulating about Trump and Epstein have been investigated and not pursued for lack of credible evidence. This part deserves attention. The demand that every single investigative lead in decades-old files must produce new prosecutions or else the entire process is a cover-up is not how the justice system works. Prosecutors need admissible evidence, credible witnesses, and statutes of limitations that have not expired. Blanche's defenders say the survivors' frustration is understandable, but that turning the Attorney General confirmation into a referendum on every uncharged allegation from the 1990s and 2000s is not governance. The White House position is that Blanche has already delivered more transparency than anyone expected, and that further politicization of the files only serves Trump's opponents. Even some unexpected voices are reacting. Republican Senator Thom Tillis forced the survivors meeting by conditioning his committee vote on it. That is not the behavior of a rubber stamp. John Cornyn has remained publicly non-committal while the White House lobbies him. Democratic Senators Chris Van Hollen and Patty Murray sent a formal letter holding Blanche to his earlier promise to meet the survivors and accusing him of prioritizing protection of the president over transparency. Legal commentators and former DOJ officials have noted the unprecedented nature of a president's personal criminal defense lawyer moving so quickly into the acting AG role and then the permanent nomination. Ethics complaints have been filed in New York by more than 100 lawyers and judges alleging conflicts of interest around the Epstein files and other matters involving Trump. This reaction stood out. Survivors released a video urging the Senate to reject Blanche, stating flatly that their personal information was exposed while alleged abusers remained protected, and that Blanche failed victims. Multiple survivors who were in the room with him have now gone on record with the same characterization of the meeting. That consistency across independent accounts is hard to dismiss as coordinated messaging. Here's why this reaches beyond Washington. The Attorney General decides what the federal government investigates, what it prioritizes, and what it quietly closes. If the person in that job is perceived, fairly or not, as primarily concerned with managing political risk for the president rather than following evidence wherever it leads, public trust in the entire system erodes. That trust is not abstract. It affects whether victims of powerful people ever come forward. It affects whether ordinary citizens believe the law applies equally. Think about this for a second. The Epstein case is the most high-profile example in a generation of alleged elite impunity around the sexual exploitation of minors. When the government finally releases the files under force of law, and the process is immediately consumed by fights over redactions, situation room strategy sessions, and confirmation politics, the message received by many people is that the system still protects its own. This is where it touches real life. Every parent who wonders whether institutions will protect children over the powerful is watching. Every person who has ever been told, move on after institutional failure, is watching. The fight over Blanche is a proxy for a deeper question. Does the Justice Department work for the American people or for the political survival of whoever occupies the White House? This is the part to watch closely. As of late July 2026, the nomination remains in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Hearings have been held, the survivors' meeting has occurred and been publicly denounced by the participants. The White House is lobbying the two key Republican holdouts. A federal court order regarding additional Epstein records is still in play. Ethics complaints against Blanche are pending in New York. The next few days matter. A committee vote could come soon. If even one Republican defects, the nomination stalls. If it advances, a full Senate fight follows. Meanwhile, the legal battle over further document releases continues on a separate track. Something is still unresolved. The survivors have made clear they will keep pressing. Blanche has made clear he believes the department has already done its duty under the law. Trump has made clear he wants the matter behind him. Those three positions cannot all prevail indefinitely. This is still moving. The Epstein files did not stay buried. The political machinery built to manage them is now under open strain. Blanche's confirmation has become the pressure point. When the next development drops, a committee vote, a new court filing, another survivor statement, or a shift in the Republican votes, I'll break it down the same way, with the actual sequence, the real quotes, and the stakes that go beyond any single nomination. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. The story is not finished.